Excited to talk with you. I think this is your first trip to the show. We've done other people's shows together, but this
No. I did it back in like during the lockdowns.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's back when I was still heavy into weed, so I forget a lot of things. But
it was all a haze.
I've been
Is
so
Curtis with you today?
What's that?
Is Curtis with us?
Kurt is here. Hey, Kurt, say hello to Dave.
Taking a leak, sorry.
He's in the bathroom. Kurt developed a coke habit the last time he played Rogan's Club.
What happens?
Hey,
Mothership. It's a code.
It's a code. So I'm so excited to have you on, Dave, because we covered. Everybody had a lot of hope for the Libertarian Party, and it all got shot down at their convention. I just want to show what you tweeted out. You said the Mises Caucus, the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, set out on a mission to bring the Ron Paul revolution into the Libertarian Party, to shed the party of goofiness, wokeness, and corruption. It's been an incredibly rewarding journey. I've met some amazing people who will be lifelong friends along the way. At the last convention in Reno, we swept every position with super majorities. This weekend, we retained control of the LNC while re-electing Angela McArdle, who is a phenomenal chair and put on the best convention in the party's history. But you didn't win. The fact is that the delegates made a huge mistake. Look, so they chose this guy. So if you won super majorities, and you also tell me how it was that your chosen candidate didn't win the nomination for the presidency for the Libertarian Party. Is it some kind of ranked choice voting happened? Was there some kind of shenanigans that I'm not aware of?
Yes, there were some. So, okay, basically what happened, all this stuff is kind of a little bit tedious and boring, but essentially back in Reno, this is 2 years ago, we were about 70% of the delegation. And so we basically just got everything we wanted. Every single position that we picked was ours. And the several factors, including me, pulling out of running, led to our numbers shrinking. So we came into this convention, we were about 45% of the delegation. So we were the biggest block, but not a majority. And so there was kind of like, there was the Mises Caucus, then there was kind of the center of the party, and then there was the Chase wing of the party. That was a smaller block than us, but again, we weren't a majority. So the middle went with us on Angela and all of our picks, or most of our picks, for the national committee. But when it came down to the presidential pick, the guy who was the candidate who kind of represented the middle, he had made promises assuring all of us, he's the vice presidential candidate now, Mike Termat, and he had made promises assuring all of us that when he came off, he was going to endorse the Mises Caucus candidate. He openly said Chase would be the worst thing for the party, and so he didn't want to support him. When it came down to it, he went over and made a deal with Chase that if he made him the VP, he would endorse Chase. Ultimately, it came down, and our 45% went with the Mises Caucus candidate, who was Michael Rechtenwald, and the entire rest of the delegation went with Chase, and that's how we got here.
And so just to remind people who is the nominee, it's this guy. Is the nominee.
Not gay, by the way.
No, he is gay.
He is?
He is gay, right? This guy is actually gay.
I don't believe
we thought he wasn't gay.
I don't believe him.
Kurt thought he was an FBI plant gay. But
they could switch
I don't know.
These Mormons.
So he's
That's a conspiracy I'm not familiar with. All I can tell you is he acts pretty gay.
Look, I hope he is, because if he's not gay wearing that, that's crazy. So I hope he is gay.
So here, Robert Barnes says, a reminder how useless the Libertarian Party is, choosing a pro-employer vaccine mandate, open borders, corporate whore candidate for the presidency. In fact, you even said this. You said the fact is that the delegates made a huge mistake choosing that guy. Look at the reaction already. Chase may not have advocated for lockdowns and mandates, but he totally bought into the propaganda, bragging about outdoor masking and social distancing and masking at dinners. He's defended drag queen story hour, chemically castrating children, and he supports open borders. I can't support that. It's a non-starter. This is going to be a very bad year for the Libertarian Party candidates, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. about it. So you're not going to vote for him.
No.
I think you're going to say, but enough about Reason magazine.
So you're not going to.
Well, I mean, look, so I did see Chase was in an interview today, and I'm trying my best not to like knock him too much because I don't want to be a sore loser. And, you know, he won, but he said something in response to one of my tweets that if I was the nominee, he would have supported me.
No, he wouldn't.
When we took over the Libertarian Party after the last convention at Reno, he posted immediately that he didn't want to have anything to do with the LNC, that he didn't support or endorse them, and that he couldn't be in a big tent with bigots and racists. And the idea that he would have supported any one of our guys if we were up there is not true. And, you know, look, like when you're talking about third party politics, there's weirdly a much higher bar to get you to vote for that person than there is for, say, Trump or Biden, because you know this person isn't actually going to be the president. And so if I'm going to vote for you, it's a protest vote. I want someone who actually represents what I believe in. And there are some things. Chase is very solid on war, and I really do appreciate that. And I believe him. I think he's genuine about it.
You'll be disappointed.
I'll tell you. Okay, so I'll tell you guys this, right? I don't think Chase is like a Fed or a plant or something like that. Now, the vice presidential candidate who I mentioned, Mike Termat, who threw the thing to him, literally was a cop and worked for the federal government. I'll let you guys speculate on whatever you think about that. Number one, I just think being a cop should disqualify you for being a libertarian candidate for anything, but that's a whole different story.
You know, everything is a plant. Like, I know people go, it's a conspiracy. Hey, is Taylor Swift a psyop? Every single bit of everything is a run as a psyop. I don't know if people notice that. You're not supposed to have a third party. You're not supposed to drag down.
Well,
so they put in an op to go, you're going to vote for Trump, or you're going to vote for Biden. I'm not sure who their op's for.
Okay, so there's no question that both the Libertarian Party and the Green Party have been infiltrated.
No question.
Points. Like, there's no question about that. So I'm not even arguing with you about that. But also, I think the way it works oftentimes is that it's not like Taylor Swift herself may not have been even like a plant or something like that, but they'll throw enough money at her, and if she's willing to say the right things, they'll be like, okay, we'll
that's what the plant
thing.
Is.
Okay,
that's
fine.
But that's the whole thing.
Say,
everybody thinks it's a conspiracy. It's just our system.
So let me ask you this.
I don't completely disagree with you.
So let me ask you now, Dave. I've heard people make the case that this guy actually is truer to the libertarian ideology than you and the Mises Caucus, because he wasn't for government mandates. He was for the corporation being able to choose if their employees got vaccinated or wore masks. And isn't that more consistent with the Libertarian Party? And if you don't like working for that corporation, you got to go work for another corporation, right?
You know what the guy with the leather jacket and the Carl Sagan hair always says?
Well, the thing about it is that this is the problem when even if you believe in any theory that is somewhat correct, but when you're just totally blue-pilled, so like you don't understand what's really going on, and it's very easy to sit there and be like, well, I don't believe, say, that lockdowns should be mandated by the government, but it would be great if people voluntarily locked down. Or I don't believe in, you know what I'm saying? And like, you don't actually recognize that, like, no, all of the halls of power are lying through their fucking teeth. That's what's actually going on right now. You know, like the problem with, say, us and like Dick Cheney isn't that he really believed Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and we really believed he didn't. The problem is that he knew that was a lie. And this was a war he had wanted since the 90s that he was now trying to find an excuse to implement. So I think Chase just really missed the mark there. Les, technically speaking,
why are you holding it against him? You just the things you just said, and you're very dead on with your info. I still love how you did that Prager debate.
Yeah,
I still
thank you.
So your guy dead on. That's not even running. The guy that's getting the nomination knows less about it than you, the dirtbag wing. That's strange. Oh, well, yeah, he's the seed planted by the cop guy. It's just obvious you're not going to be allowed. Like, you're not going to be allowed to have a viable third party. That is on purpose. I think.
Well, okay, let me say a few things to that. Number one, as I think the three of us could all relate to as three borderline retarded comedians who know more than every expert around this country, that's not that shocking, actually. And I will say, Kurt, like I don't completely disagree with you, but I'll tell you, man, we were really, really close to winning this thing. I mean, we lost by
that's why it was taken from you.
So was Bernie Sanders in 2016, right?
Yeah, you don't even want to know what he had to do.
And so what happened with Bernie Sanders? So I can really feel for you, Dave, because I saw it happen right in front of my face. Bernie Sanders, everything he was against, he then told his supporters to just vote for. Everything he was against, now we had to now vote for, and I wouldn't do it.
But that's because Bernie Sanders was always that. You know, he rode that wave, but he was always that guy who kind of like bailed. I don't know. You could look back way before any of this stuff. There was Bernie Sanders was working with Ron Paul on this End the Fed bill. Like, and Ron Paul was in the House and Bernie Sanders was like crafting legislation in the Senate. And then when they threw it over to the Senate, he like reintroduced it, and it was totally gutted of all of the like actual auditing the Federal Reserve stuff. And like, I think that's always been his role. I think Ron Paul was the real deal, and you could tell that because at the end of the 2008 campaign, they tried to get him to endorse John McCain, and he was like, "Are you out of your mind? I'm going to endorse John McCain." And so that's a good litmus test right there. I will say this, okay, in defense of Chase, he first up, has been solid in every speech he's given about being anti-war. In his acceptance speech, he called the Israeli campaign in Gaza a genocide, and someone heckled him and goes, "Well, why don't they release the hostages?" And he immediately snapped back and went, "Yeah, if you really want the hostages out safe, dropping bombs on Gaza isn't the way to get them." And I think he meant that. I just think that, and that's great. He's good on like the most important issue. But I do just think that he's bought into this entire cultural nonsense. And unfortunately, that's just, if you wrap the anti-war message into like, I'm anti-war and also I'm okay with chemically castrating children, don't be surprised when that anti-war message doesn't get very far.
It's going to not get far.
So
he's going to turn on it.
And I think that's the issue.
But isn't that also a libertarian position, letting parents and kids make their own choices about chemically castrating themselves?
No, of course not.
You want the government? Do you got the government to tell you have to keep your dick?
I want a healthcare professional, not quite a doctor, but they do run a booth. I take my kid, they assess. The answer is yes. They're given TRT.
I think that not only libertarianism, but any worldview where you believe in any level of freedom excludes children from having that freedom. So I don't think that's like even unique to libertarians, that like all of us probably believe people ought to have the freedom to say whatever they want or drive a car or whatever.
No, you should be limited as an adult, but children should be exposed to everything.
That is, by the way, that is essentially the position of the regime, right? They are total libertarians only for kids.
Yes.
And total despots for adults.
Yeah, we think that's about probably nothing good.
So what about open borders also? Doesn't he have the pure position on as a libertarian on open borders? You vote with your feet. You want to live in Mexico, you want to live in the United States, right? Government shouldn't tell people where they live.
Put on your sneaking shoes.
Well, no. I mean, first of all, I think you could say that this is not the mass influx of migrants is not an organic market function. There is all types of NGO money that comes directly from the UN all behind this. It's not just like a coincidence that people from all over the world are sneaking in our southern border. But on top of that, no, open borders is not the correct libertarian policy. Libertarianism basically, in its purest form, says that the government is a criminal organization who gets everything it has by stealing from its people. And the idea that when something's stolen from you, it therefore belongs to the entire world rather than it should be rightfully returned to you is not correct. And the truth is, the libertarian perspective would be that people should be allowed to come here if they're invited here. But it's not that people should be allowed to just storm in and the domestic population has no right to say, we can't take this many people in anymore. Then it would be true that if, 5 people wanted to live at your house and you were like, no, you can't live here. The libertarian position isn't, you have freedom of movement to
just
come into my house. Just get a better job
in a better country.
So do you think that this influx of millions and millions of illegal immigrants, people who aren't here legally, you think that that's some kind of nefarious plot by the donor class who actually runs the Republican and the Democratic Party?
Well, yes. And I mean, Jimmy, I mean, if you remember, around like the time in like Obama's second term, they were openly bragging about this, and all the progressives on MSNBC, they had a term for it called the Browning of America, and that this was going to ensure Democratic majorities in perpetuity.
Demographics is destiny, they used to say.
Yes, they used to say it. It's like all the stuff that like the alt-right like, nationalist types. Yeah, kind of. But then it was like as soon as like there was like this right-wing reaction against that, they called it the Great Replacement Theory. Then they decided, oh, that's a horrible racist thing to say. But I was like, I remember hearing Joy Reid talk about this just a few years earlier and bragging about how wonderful it is. So,
and that they're going to turn Texas blue because of demographics. I remember that. I remember that saying demographics is destiny. And so Republicanism is going away. And so now the Democrats and liberalism is the ideology of the establishment, but they've bastardized liberalism and they've turned it into authoritarianism. And that's the opposite of what liberalism is. And so now that's why I'm called a right winger, because I stand up against authoritarianism and I tell the truth about it. And I tell the truth about the Ukraine war and the Syrian war and Russiagate, which was a conspiracy between the establishment donor class Democratic Party, Clinton campaign, the FBI and the CIA to frame a president as a traitor to our country. Because why do you think they did that to Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, there's a few major reasons, I think. And I think it's that Donald Trump, first off, I think he embodied something that was unacceptable to them.
Which
like
is
just his that he was a giant middle finger to the entire establishment, that he was running this kind of populist campaign on, aren't you furious at what these criminals have done to you, with real anger in it. So before you even get to any policy issue, that's a threat to them. They don't like that. You know, this is the same reason
similar
why
to
Bernie
Brexit,
is,
right?
Yes.
Similar to Brexit.
They gain-of-functioned him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sure did. But then also, you know, Jimmy, if you remember, like Donald Trump, you know, the problem with Donald Trump is that he's just like, he's never read a book about anything. He doesn't really understand any issue. But he's just a creature who shoots from the hip. Like, it's all gut stuff. And he would say some really good things, and not just some good things. And I know you know a lot about this, Jimmy. So this one particular always stuck out to me. But do you remember in 2016 when Donald Trump would just say that Obama created ISIS?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he would just like, he would say this, and I don't know who put that in his ear. I know he didn't know that. I know someone told him it, and he went, I'm going to run with that.
People are talking. They're telling me Obama made ISIS.
Many smart people.
They say things.
And I've heard you talk a lot about the Syrian war, Jimmy. So I know you know this stuff. But like, look, it might be a little bit. In fact, it is a little bit of an overstatement to say Obama created ISIS, but he definitely funded and armed them. And knowingly did so. Which, to be clear, is there were Al Qaeda members there in Syria too. This is literal treason. Like with a capital T. It's the definition of treason.
Let Obama. What are you, racist? Reagan could do treason.
They all do it.
What?
They all do
You're
it.
not going to do a little treason?
Come on.
And be the president. I don't think you have what it takes.
Probably
Treason.
not. But so when Donald Trump is calling this out on national television, he's calling out John Brennan and Barack Obama for committing treason. Now, he's possibly about to be the president. And that, you know what the punishment for treason is? It's a firm talking to. And
yeah, they're crazy about it now. You can see him all freaked out that he has lists of.
Yes. Look, they're totally projecting, right? The whole time you hear them. He's going to weaponize the justice system. What do they really mean by that? He might arrest some of us. He was, you know, like they've been committing all these crimes, and now this guy. So I think that's what they're scared of. I think that's why he was always like just unacceptable to the powers that be. Bernie Sanders was also unacceptable. Bernie Sanders was just much more willing to go out without a fight than Trump.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, they went to the trouble of setting up Trump as the one you can't vote for to make Hillary the baby face of the wrestling match.
So,
which was real dumb.
So when Donald Trump, I think it was a North Carolina debate, said that Jeb Bush and his brother,
South Carolina,
it was a horrible, and you guys lied about it, and they lied, and he went against the war machine, and you can't do that. And so the establishment tried to paint Donald Trump's campaign as being over that night. And the exact opposite of what was happening was that he was winning over people in droves, and they had to try to grab hold of that narrative to make people not think what was happening, which is what everything is always, right? It's always the narrative. That's why they have to censor people on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And because if they lose control of the narrative, then they have to start disappearing people, which they do. They're doing it to lots of people, but it's harder to do that. Right.
No, so you're totally, that's exactly right. And look, that also explains, like, what this is a point that Tucker Carlson's made a lot of times. I think it's one of my favorite points that I've heard him make, is that if you just look at the way the ruling class in America is behaving, they're not behaving like a ruling class that is confident that they're going to continue to have power.
Right.
They're like freaking out and coming unglued. And it's for exactly the reason that you just said. That, and this is the biggest white pill. Like, this is the biggest case for all of us to be optimistic, is that their monopoly on information, which they had forever, has been completely cracked open in just a few years. And it's very, like, it's hard for all of us to even really appreciate how crazy it is that, like, the show we're on right now has more viewers than many of the corporate media outlets. And now they have this desperate attempt to kind of censor as much as they can. But at least to me, it feels like a guy like standing in front of a wave trying to physically push the wave back. And you're like, this just isn't going to happen. It's going to find whatever holes it can. It's getting through.
It looks like someone being canceled is what it looks like.
Yeah, but even the cancellation attempts, like, I think you think about
the reverse is coming back. The King Kong swatting planes. That's what they look like.
Yeah, kind of. So I think that they're the fact that they rely on propaganda so much and they rely on controlling the narrative is kind of encouraging, because it's like, oh, well, we're probably never going to be able to get into the halls of power and like roll this thing back, but we can chip away at their narrative, which has so many holes in it.
So, all right, let me see what else I have here for you. You tweeted this out. Ironically, Chase winning is the best outcome for Donald Trump this weekend, much better than a standing ovation at his speech. I would have to agree with you, because I can't imagine anyone wanting to vote for someone like Chase, who is...
come on. I mean, think about it. Donald Trump came to the convention to speak to libertarians. And like, why did he come? He came because he's like, well, I mean, libertarians have gotten millions of votes in the last couple election cycles. This might be a razor thin election, especially with Bobby Kennedy in there. So I need every demographic I can get. And all you got to do, if you think anyone who is considering voting for Trump might vote libertarian, is just hold up that picture of Chase that you had up there and go, you want to vote for that guy? And anyone who's even considering Trump will fly back to Trump. I know many good libertarians who hate Donald Trump who have flown back to Trump already. Yeah, I shouldn't say back to, too, for the first time.
Yeah, so, that's one of those things where the CIA kind of works against itself, where they want to squash the third party, but at the same time, they're propping up the person that they're most committed against, which is Donald Trump. So let me just play this for you. George Carlin had this to say about voting.
Because if it's really just the fault of these politicians, then where are all the other bright people of conscience? Where are all the bright, honest, intelligent Americans ready to step in and save the nation and lead the way? We don't have people like that.
No, we have them. But I don't know if you saw, so George is not around anymore. But what I would say back to him is, I don't know if you saw what happened to Russell Brand or Tucker Carlson or my Wikipedia page or this. Look what they do to anybody who stands up and tells the truth against the establishment. They destroy them as traitors to their country, as rapists. They did the same thing to Julian Assange. The first card they pulled was he was a rapist. And
no, there's no question about that. But
were you afraid that would happen to you, and that's why you didn't run?
No, there were. It was more family issues for me than anything like that. I got 2 little kids and stuff. But I think I'm kind of, the reason I was comfortable with it is that, even in your example there, it's like, yeah, but like you and Joe Rogan and Russell Brand, you're all like still doing great, and they try. It's not like working as much anymore. And I think I'm at least in a somewhat protected situation where like, I don't know. I mean, Kurt, what are you going to do? Write a letter to Louis J. Gomez and try to get me fired?
Well, that's the thing. So they've got me screwed over in polite society, right? Like all my old friends, most of my old friends now won't touch me with a 10-foot pole. I have new friends.
But see, Jimmy, the point is, and Kurt will tell you, I do not run with polite society.
Yeah, we go to Skankfest every year.
that's where I'm at, Skankfest.
Well, I'll be
so
at Skankfest this year.
Because you had like liberal friends in LA, so you got to. That's a whole different system. That's a whole different situation.
The old comedy scene was filled with these people, and they stink. I mean, they're not. They were never your. I hate to be like mom, like, well, they weren't your friends.
Well, it turns out they weren't my friends. None of them, and the ones who I thought were the smartest and the ones who would speak out the loudest. Didn't. They tucked their tail, especially during COVID. They wouldn't say shit about Russiagate. They won't tell. Jon Stewart won't tell you the truth about Ukraine, but he'll pin a medal on a literal Nazi at Disney World, but he won't tell you the truth about the vaccines. In fact, he brought on 4th Vaccine Liars on his show, and he didn't bring on Dr. Robert Malone or Peter McCullough or Pierre Corey or even someone like me. He brought on no one to tell people the other side, nothing. And they'll never tell. I keep telling people, Jon Stewart will never tell his audience the truth about the Ukraine war. Never. He'll never, ever do that. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about it. Go ahead. Well,
I think, you kind of touched on it all right there, right? So I worked for CNN for like a year, or Turner. It was a SE Cup show I was a contributor on. And I think she just hired me, like she's like heard like, oh, he's like a comedian and he talks about politics. He'll be like funny on the show. And I'm like, I'm not funny on shows. I'm only funny on stage. So I'm here to argue about war with you. Anyway, so getting to know some of the people there. I would hang out in the building. I met Don Lemon. I met Chris Cuomo there. I met like a bunch of these guys, briefly. Like I didn't know them like super well or nothing.
Salt of the earth truth tellers.
Well, yes, that's right. The great journalists of our time. And there's this thing. There's like an air about people where you can kind of read them pretty quickly. So like I saw things where like a Don Lemon type or someone would walk in the room and be, kind of like just got off the phone with Dick Cheney's chief of staff and he gave me the inside on this and that. And like they're all in love with the fact that they like, ooh, I just talked to a senator and I'm like, I know this guy and the head of the New York Times said that, blah, 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 blah. And like, and they go to the cocktail parties and like they're in this world. And just as you were talking about like having to give up your world of like even liberal comedian friends or something is tough. But when you really have like a feeling of status like that and it's like your self-worth, it's almost like the only like 1 in 20 of them have to be actual CIA guys. Yeah, you know what I mean? The rest of them are all just playing that game where they're just like, I'm not going to say the thing that will get me kicked out of this club. And they're very good at signaling what that thing is. Like you're allowed to go up to this point, but all the things you just named, Jimmy, like the vax injuries or the truth about the war in Ukraine or the truth about the war in Gaza or all these
liberty
or Russiagate.
Well, that's a great. Yeah, I didn't catch the whole thing, but that's so cool. You guys had an interview about that because that's one of like the crazy forgotten stories of history. But all of this stuff, right, that you're not allowed to talk about. A lot of people. There's a certain personality type where people are built like the way where you're like, I don't care. I'll take all these bullets. I don't care. I believe in what I believe in. Most people don't feel that way. We're pack animals. And most people don't want to be isolated from the pack. That's where danger is. That's where you get, you know what I mean? That's where like
there's the societal pull.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like that's where a predator comes out and gets you. You're safe in numbers. You're vulnerable alone. And so most people, and I'm sure this is the case with Jon Stewart too. He knows a lot of this stuff he knows pretty well, but he's just not going to touch it because like then he loses everything he has.
Yeah, well, once you get molested in the pack, you realize it's not so safe inside. You might fare better.
So George Carlin has a little bit more to say I want to play.
This country. Everybody's at the mall, scratching his ass, picking his nose, taking his credit card out of his fanny pack and buying a pair of sneakers with lights in them.
I like sneakers with lights in them. I don't know why he's got to come down on those. I saw. Did you know in the 50s they invented tires that lit up? Why don't they fucking have those anymore?
They have tires that light up.
I don't ever see them. When have you've seen them?
Yeah, I've seen them in like video games. Even
I've never seen them in real life. Here we go. Hang on.
Because if it's really just the fault of these politicians, then where are all the other bright people of conscience? Where are all the bright, honest, intelligent Americans ready to step in and save the nation and lead the way? We don't have people like that in this country.
We do.
Everybody's at the mall, scratching his ass, picking his nose, taking his credit card out of his fanny pack and buying a pair of sneakers with lights in them.
You don't have malls. You
don't have malls anymore.
So I have solved this little political dilemma for myself in a very simple way. On election day, I stay home. I don't vote. Fuck them. Fuck them. I don't vote. Two reasons I don't vote. First of all, it's meaningless. This country was bought and sold and paid for a long time ago. The shit they shuffle around every 4 years doesn't mean a fucking thing. And secondly, I don't vote because I believe if you...
So what's your response to that? That he doesn't vote, and I believe he didn't. Even though members of the family tried to say that he liked Hillary Clinton, I can't imagine that. But he doesn't participate because voting doesn't matter. The people own it. And what do you say to that, Dave?
Well, far be it from me to argue with the legend George Carlin. But yeah, I mean, look, there's certain cases, like there are local votes, I think, that really matter. You know what I mean? Like if you could go down and like vote for your sheriff, and there might be a really big difference between the two sheriffs running. And so, you know what I mean? Like there's some things like that. But if you're talking about voting for president, well, first of all, the majority of the country is either like a deep blue or a deep red state. So if you're voting for, you know, like I'm in New Jersey, this is going Democrat. So to go vote Democrat would be a waste. To go vote Republican would be a waste. It's nothing. But even like you're entering into something where you have what, a 150 millionth of a say in it. And what does it take you? What's the time commitment to vote? I guess not much now if you're just mailing in a ballot. So whatever. But, you know, it's like you could do almost anything else with that time and have done something more productive for society than to vote for one of the major two parties, which are identical on all of the issues that matter.
They do. They are identical, and that's why. Well, you know, that's so. There's the swing states, right? So there's like 8 people in 8 different states that get to decide who's the actual president. The president that's already been pre-selected, and the one president that wasn't was Donald Trump. And the reason why is because they didn't have super delegates like they have in the Democratic Party. And if they had super delegates, believe me, they would have got rid of Donald Trump that way. So that's why I think, you know, Bernie Sanders should have run in the Republican Party in 2020 if he was serious about anything, but he's not serious.
What do they have? Bat delegates?
So they so let me do we have to go to
yeah, if we could switch over to Rumble, that would be great.
We're going to jump over to Rumble. Could you stick with us?
That Kurt joke was underrated.
I didn't get it. I don't understand it. Often Kurt's brilliance goes right past
super
me.
Delegates versus bat delegates. Come on.
Super delegates between I still don't get
Superman, Batman.
Oh. Now I get it. Thank you.
It took me a second.
Yeah. Should have said Batman delegates, and then I would have got it.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm trying to keep it even, but
I know.
Hi, baby.
All right, but anyway, so we're gonna take a break. We're gonna go over to Rumble.
I'm all ready.
Everybody go see us at Rumble, and Steph is she's got your super chat saved. We'll read them over there, and we're gonna have more with Dave Smith coming up in just a few minutes.
All right.
It's just I'm always surprised to see comedians who still think there's a difference between the two parties. And people who think themselves, or there's like Greg Proops, who calls himself the smartest guy in the world, is that maybe the dumbest guy I've ever seen in my life politically. He has a big vocabulary, but you go to his Twitter feed and it still has him with the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as they're committing a genocide, and he's somehow a better person than a right winger. I'm just gobsmacked at how stupid that. But of course, he's made his whole life through his whole living has come through the establishment. He's been embraced by them, and so
you expected more from a giant of improv.
I mean, that's just one example. And the only reason I feel comfortable calling him out is because he's blocked me on Twitter, so he already hates me. So who cares, right? But I just can't imagine being that dumb that you would think that Joe Biden, who's been the biggest racist politician since he started, is the enemy to black and I had to school Cornel West about that, and I was like, you know what, black and brown people are locked up in higher rates not because of Donald Trump, but because of Joe Biden. You realize that. Of course he realizes that, but he's never going to say it because that would wreck his position in the ivory tower world he's lived in for the last 45 years. So it's just these. How do you share my disappointment in, your own profession? I mean, talking about comedy, and go ahead.
Yeah, well, see, the problem is, like, really what happened is that, and this is, I'll put my libertarian angle on this too, but the thing is that the government has gotten so much bigger in the last 20 years. And I don't think people truly appreciate that we've basically lived through a revolution. Like, the country in the 1990s bears no resemblance to the country today. And the government of today bears no resemblance to the government even in the 1990s. There was all of these things, like the Department of Homeland Security didn't exist.
Yeah.
The TSA didn't exist. The Patriot Act didn't exist. There's so many things like this that
we still had habeas corpus.
Yeah, yes, and there were problems. There were lots of problems, and we were already going in this direction. But like, as the government's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, politics, you just feel it. It seeps into every part of life more and more and more. Like, everything's political. Sporting events are political. Children's libraries are political. Like, everything. And the problem is just that, like, most people shouldn't talk or give their opinions about politics at all. It's a specialized thing. Most people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they just kind of like drink the Kool-Aid of whatever the popular opinion is around them, and it's terrible. I just wish so yes, I'm disappointed with it, but like,
well, if all you have available in your area is Kool-Aid, it's probably, you don't live in that good
Kurt,
neighborhood.
but this, and I say this to Kurt just because, like, me and him were in the New York scene for so many years together, and like, so we know a lot of the same people. But like, during the rise of like wokeism and all this shit, that there were just so many comedians we'd know who would come and like make a point and just say the same, like bullshit woke point about whatever, and you'd just be like, you're not even a person who's supposed to have a point. Like, what are you talking about? Coming up to me and even like
the comedy means something and politics means something. They're looking at, I want to get ahead in this thing.
Yeah,
my profession is not disappointing me. I like doing comedy. The business was always a big piece of shit. So the assholes that ran the business, that after Occupy Wall Street, it was time to start pushing this thing because that really scared them.
Yeah,
and so you want to suck up to the right company, right? You see that girl. I can't remember what dumb football player, he made some trad cat speech, and then this girl who used to be a cheerleader for the same team came and goes, did you not get PR lessons? Because that's not how we talk. Neither of them work for the team anymore, by the way. Like, neither one of them work for it. And she's programmed to care about the company. Everybody's programmed to never punch out and always be like, you're a brand. You're not even the cow the brand is on. You're the brand.
Yeah, I think that's true. But look, one of the things that's really been cool about the last few years, and I'm sure you see this too, like, I don't know, I was just thinking about this, but when you said the thing about Cornel West, and you were making the point about Joe Biden, who is, it's every bit as bad. If you don't know the history of it, I'm telling you, Joe Biden's record on drugs is worse than you could possibly imagine. Like, in the 80s, before the crime bill, in the 80s, he partnered up with Strom Thurmond, the segregationist, and pressured Reagan from his right to crack down even more as Ronald Reagan was ramping up the war on drugs. Yeah, exactly. And then they went, look, this is bipartisan support for crime safety. So so anyway, the point I'm making is that over these last few years, it is like this crazy litmus test where you get to see who's who. So Cornel West may fail that test, but then did you see when Bill Maher was grilling Killer Mike?
So I wanted
about that, and he's just like, nope, sorry, not doing that for those exact reasons. And like, then you get to see kind of like who's who,
but who
passes the test.
Did you? I didn't see that, but I did see Bill Maher go on his.
Okay, is it still filming? Ask him if is it still filming.
We had a bit of a power glitch here.
Oh, okay, it happens.
All right, hold on.
I guess
I'm looking. I'm watching. Okay, it looks like. I think.
Oh, this is the CIA. You know this is the CIA.
Okay, I can still see Dave on camera. All right, let me see if it froze. Live.
Oh, I got to go to Rumble.
Three,
So-
2, 1, you're live.
So, Dave, I just want to follow up on your Bill Maher point. Was that was great to see Killer Mike do that, because I did not expect that from him, because so that was great. But the thing that and then he got arrested like a night later. I don't know if-
That's right.
At the Grammys, right?
so yeah, he got arrested. So I wonder if those two things are connected. That was them. Hey, you better not say that shit again. Anyway, but Bill Maher went on. He's got a book, I guess, and he went on a right wing tour. Went on Gutfeld. He went out with Megyn Kelly, and did you see, like it was a week or two ago, he had Bill Burr on, and he told Bill, "See, Bill, that's why you shouldn't talk about politics. It's my thing." And Bill said, "Who the fuck are you? You don't know anything. You act like you're a general. You don't know shit." And when he went on that right wing tour, he got proven that Bill Maher didn't know shit. He thought cops actually got killed on January 6th. He still thinks Russiagate is fucking real.
Well, it's kind of it was very interesting to me, because there's this new kind of new ecosystem of, like whatever we call all these shows. People still use the word podcast all the time, even though none of us have had an iPod in 20 years. But whatever these shows are, the ones that are kind of outside of like the main corporate world, it's interesting to see Bill Maher start. Instead of just going, say, to the Tonight Show and things like that, you see, like, he gets to have this air of like, I actually know things. And in order for politics, you have to know things, and that, but then when when he actually starts and sits down and has a conversation with anyone in this world, it's like, oh, you're going to actually get pushed on this. And it's crazy. That's why it's crazy. I don't know. I'm debating Chris Cuomo the day after tomorrow. And it's I know you did that phenomenal takedown of him on his on Patrick Bet David's show, and you were responding to it. But isn't it something where you hear him come around and he's like, guys, get this. In 2024, he's going, guys, ivermectin is given to people. It's not just animals. Are you guys aware of this? Have you guys heard about this? And we're like, dude, yes, that's what this took a 5-minute Google search. We've all been talking about this for 2 years now, while you were shaming all of us for saying it.
Something else that's
But you see his attitude. I'll tell you something else that's crazy.
So I want to play
this. You guys heard about this one?
I want to play this.
People get hurt by the facts.
I think my brother might be a jerk off.
I'll tell you something else that's going to get you a lot of hits. I am taking a what do they call it? Like a regular dose, whatever. They're trying to build up of ivermectin. Ivermectin was a boogeyman early on in COVID.
You couldn't talk about it.
That was wrong. We were given bad information about ivermectin.
Now
The
put it
real
together.
question is why? Everyone's going to say Joe Rogan was right. No, Joe Rogan was saying, yeah, he was right. but that's not.
Dude, that's my favorite part. That's my favorite part. The pause where he's like, "No, people are going to say Joe Rogan was right." No, and then in his head you can see he's like, "Think, Cuomo, think. Why was he wrong? Why was he wrong when I'm saying the same exact thing he was saying 2 years after mocking him for saying it?"
Do you see?
So listen to what he says here.
What matters is the entire clinical community knew that ivermectin couldn't hurt you. They knew it, Patrick. I know they knew it. How do I know? Because now I'm doing nothing but talking to these clinicians.
So what? I just wanted to play that for you. So I know you're going to do a great job, but I just wanted to point out that he just hoisted himself on his own petard. And so how did he do that there? Because he's admitting, he's admitting he didn't talk to anybody during COVID. He didn't interview one fucking doctor. He didn't call a clinician because he just admitted all the clinicians knew ivermectin was a harmless drug that had been prescribed billions of times. He knows it now. After he got fucking vaccine injured, he knows it now. But back then, he would gladly smear Joe Rogan and anybody else who was telling the truth about it. And like you just said, David, all it would take was a 30-second Google search of ivermectin, and he would know that it was a Nobel Prize-winning medicine on the WHO list of essential medicines that had saved billions of lives, and it was safer than. And they were looking at it to cure cancer before COVID, and it's considered a wonder drug, second only to penicillin. He did none of that.
Yeah. Well, and look, I'm like, I don't want to like go too hard, and like, I really want him to show up to this debate, but look. If you just think about it, how much there's no excuse. I mean, look, just like pretend your job is news and someone comes to you and goes, okay, so there's this big push for a mandate for a pharmaceutical product. And then there's a therapy that's being pushed, a drug that's being pushed that could, like help with the virus. And the whole world is like coming down on this drug. But then you go, someone like Joe Rogan goes, my doctor prescribed me this. Wouldn't your first question would have to be, there's a doctor. Why is the doctor prescribing that? And then let me just Google it. Let me Google it once before I talk about it every single night for that. So if you're not just corrupt and lying, it's just such inexcusable dereliction of duty.
He's like Joey from Friends. He don't know shit about the news.
So that is exactly what has been revealed there, is that he's like, I'm not actually a news guy. I'm a news reader, just like they've said since forever about the news people.
Even the good ones were jerk-offs too, by the way. Don't think just because he seems like a real E-channel person.
And I will say that I scratched my head when Patrick Bet David hired him for his show, but this is a great thing. This is
it's cool with me now.
This is a what's that?
It's cool with me now.
Did
now
he
that we get
him to Value Largo?
Yeah.
Will I be invited to Value Largo? Ask Patrick.
I'll try to get a +1 if I can.
And I just want to show you, because I'm very excited. I tweeted to Patrick Bet David that I'm officially jealous of Dave Smith that gets to go and confront him. I would love to be able to do this, but you're going to do a great job. I know you will. But I just want to show you this too, just so you have this in your back pocket, because of what he just said. He says, now I'm talking to clinicians and all of them know that ivermectin was harmless and blah, blah, blah. So now listen to what he says here.
Choose not to. Please don't berate me for doing that. That is a personal choice I have made. It's my own healthcare. I am allowed to do that.
He's talking about a guy who had COVID. This guy had COVID. He has natural immunity, and he didn't want to take the vaccine. And Chris Cuomo's pushback is this.
Aaron, you're absolutely right to do it. You have a right to do it. Two different statements. Okay? Do you have the right? Of course, nobody's debating that except you guys as a false choice. What I'm saying is...
no, everybody was debating that, by the way, because there were mandates. The president of the United States had to have a court struck down. So everybody was saying you didn't have a choice, fuckface. That's why people who are used to be pro-choice don't call themselves pro-choice anymore. They call themselves pro-abortion, which nobody's pro-abortion. Anyway,
well, that's why he got sick, because he had no choice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, right. And it's just so I mean, it's so incredibly dishonest to even frame it that way. That like, look, man, like, first of all, there were tens of millions of Americans who were like going to lose their job.
That's right.
Lose friends, lose all types of things. And that's just like, okay, you could say that was like the company's decision or not the government's or something. And by the way, that's only true because the Supreme Court struck down Joe Biden's OSHA mandate where all midsize and big companies would have had to vaccinate their employees. But forget that. I personally was turned into a second-class citizen in my city. Like there were months where I was not allowed to go to a restaurant, or if I did, they'd have a special outside seating for me where I wasn't allowed to go to a Knicks game, or I wasn't allowed to go to like movies or like all this shit. In the city I grew up in, they literally instituted apartheid based on the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So like, fuck him to turn around and go, oh, the debate about whether you have the right to do this isn't even really a debate.
Vax-apartheid?
Like, yeah. I mean, literally, like it's just bananas to say that.
So that was not even the point of me showing this, but I'm glad.
Yeah, it's just one additional thing.
It's one additional thing. Here's another thing.
It right to do it. Have you spoken to a doctor? You're supposed to be a leader. Have you?
So he just admitted. So he's shaming this guy. Have you spoken to a doctor? You're supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to be a fucking newsman, Chris Cuomo.
I spoke to Don Lemon.
Have you talked to a doctor? You haven't talked. You just admitted on the previous clip that you didn't talk to anybody because if you had, all the clinicians knew that ivermectin was a harmless drug that was a human medicine, but you didn't. And so here he is telling this. So that's his classic projection. He's hating on this guy because he's projecting what he is onto that guy. He's a lazy liar who didn't talk to anybody, and now he's projecting that onto this guy who actually did talk to doctors. He actually did know about natural immunity. And that's still not the reason I'm telling you this, but let's play it.
Talk to the CDC and the people who are in Florida at the Department of Health about whether or not they think you made a good choice. Because if your answer is just then...
So he's saying, did you talk to the CDC? Chris, you're supposed to question the people at the CDC. Your jumping off point is supposed to be the government is lying because they're corporate captured, and now I have to find out where they're lying. So he's telling this guy, why aren't you doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Turns out that guy was doing that. Anyway, okay.
Well, I don't care what they say. This is me. I'm an American. That is being dumb as a proxy for being bold.
Please play this for him.
That's exactly what he's doing here. He's being dumb as a proxy for being bold, because if he was bold, he would question the government. He would question big pharma bought captured agencies. That would be being bold. And he would actually go talk to the doctor that he talked to. He would talk to Joe Rogan's doctor. He would have on Peter McCullough. He would have on Dr. Pierre Corey. He would have on, I forget his name. He would have on all those people. But he didn't. So he's, again, this is classic Jungian projection. He's projecting onto him the thing that he hates about himself, that he's being dumb as a proxy for bold, and he doesn't do any of his research.
Wait, can I just give him some credit, though? Because, okay, yes, that's true. But now he may have given up on being a vaccine Zionist, but he's still a Zionist. Let's give him that.
All right, hold on. And that's still not the reason why I'm playing this, but here we go.
And I don't think it's a good message because remember, it's not just you protecting yourself.
Let me say this.
It's you protecting me and other people from you.
They're going to kill me, man.
So that, again, that logic was never logic. That is illogic, because if the vaccine works the way you said it did, then people can go out and get their vaccine. Why do they need someone? If I have my polio vaccine, I don't need someone else to go get it to protect me. I've got mine. So that's why
it's so bananas. The logic, it's so crazy that they were ever able to sell this at all to anyone, where he goes right away. It's like, hey, I got my vaccine. How come you won't get your vaccine? And he goes, the vaccine works. You're dumb if you don't get it. And I need you to get it so you protect me. The fact that anyone could have ever looked at that and not gone, quick question.
That's how you know the whole thing's fake. That's the thing that he's trying to dodge now when he goes, oh, it turns out clinicians. Yeah. Let's not even talk about Rogan. How about, have you noticed anything, Chris, after this ordeal, maybe, that the whole thing stinks? You can't trust any of them, and the experts that you looked at, like your Don Lemons, and Sanjay Guptas don't know shit.
Right. By the way, when he says that all the clinicians knew, didn't Dr. Sanjay Gupta work at CNN? Didn't you bump into him at the propaganda meeting? Didn't he tell you, hey, by the way, ivermectin? Because when he went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan said, why is everybody lying about ivermectin? Dr. Sanjay Gupta goes, I don't know.
Because they probably should have done that.
Yep. Here we go. There's more of this.
That's why you get vaccinated, not just for yourself. Important distinction. Go ahead.
Actually, the way vaccines work are to protect yourself. A vaccine basically gives you a special cocoon where you actually limit the worst harmful effects of the virus itself, or may not get it altogether, depending on your own personal physiology. So that's the way vaccines work. Now, to me personally, I did talk to a couple of doctors that I know about it. I told them I already had it, and I'm 42. What do you think? And they said, yeah, you're fine. If that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. They didn't come and say, no, you have to do it because of everybody else. Because if other people want to be protected, they have access to vaccines. Go get the vaccine. I would never tell anybody not to get vaccinated. I do totally support it if that's what somebody chooses to do.
Byron, I'm with you.
I don't know why this is hard. It's that simple.
Oh, listen, I totally agree with you. It is very simple. I think you're making it hard because you're seeing some kind of righteousness and a choice to do something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But again, that's your right. What I'm saying is something else. You're wrong about how vaccines work. You're only giving part of the prophylaxis, okay? The other aspect to why you take the vaccine is it also reduces, not completely, nothing is perfect, and certainly this vaccine is not, but it also reduces your ability to communicate the virus and make other people infected. That part matters too.
But they're vaccinated.
So listen, so now
not us resurfacing. We've had
so now they ask him, do you want to apologize? And watch what he says.
Tom and I are talking about the long vaccine and what that's doing. A lot of my friends are going through it. And
long
you keep
COVID.
hearing, not long vaccine, forgive me. Long COVID. A lot of friends are talking about it. We're 40, 50, you're sitting there saying, hey, what the hell is going on in my body? What's changed from that conversation with you and Byron to where you are today?
Well, a lot has changed, and a lot needs to change that hasn't. Here's what matters to me about the clip. Apology? Of course not.
Great job,
Byron Donalds.
Why? Listen to his rationale of why he's not going to apologize. It makes absolutely no sense. Watch this.
Comes on my show now. Okay. Why? Exchange of respect was never personal. I believe as a leader at that time, you had a duty to be thorough in what you were putting out there as opposed to just playing politics.
And turns out he was being thorough. He talked to doctors, and the guy who wasn't being thorough was Chris Cuomo. Go ahead, Dave, comment.
Well, look, man, I mean, I don't want to give the whole thing away because I am going to be debating this guy soon. But look, I mean, it's just like that. What he said is exactly right. Yeah, it's your job to be thorough and not political. And like, okay, a couple quick things. Number one, you brought up the thing with Gupta when he had no argument over ivermectin. But the other really interesting thing on that episode, I actually thought was the most interesting, because this was when Gupta went on Rogan's show. It was during the vaccine passports, during that time when you couldn't go into restaurants and stuff like that. And so he goes to Gupta goes to Rogan and goes, so are you going to get the vaccine? And Joe goes, no. And he goes, why not? He goes, I just had COVID. And he goes, I have natural immunity. That's stronger than the vaccine. And he goes, so why would I get the vaccine? And Gupta had no answer. He had no answer. He just went, oh, well, yeah, you probably got.
No, he said, I'm glad you're feeling
immunity.
better.
He said, and he just like totally copped out.
He did sales techniques. That's how, when I worked at Nobody Beats the Wiz, they taught us when a customer says no, what they mean is, I need to know more. They actually taught us to assault people with sales. So that's what he did. He diverted the conversation.
Right.
Because they don't want to acknowledge the point. Chris Cuomo's like stuck in this mode here.
That's right. But I'm saying, so it's your job to be thorough here, right? And as he's grilling this guy, he says he's had COVID. He goes, I've had COVID before. And I asked my doctor, they said, I don't need to get the vaccine. And I'm just making the point that if he's saying being thorough, like even your own TV doctor had no answer for that question. So where is the onus to be thorough and like know what you're talking about and not be political? Is it like, it's crazy.
It's mutual
They
respect,
obviously
Dave.
just played one side of this.
And of course, you know, I don't have the video, but when he pretended to be in quarantine, he wasn't. And when he pretended to come out from the basement and he had it videoed, filmed it in front of his children. They all knew he was lying. And he's just and he didn't get fired for that because he was lying at the behest of the establishment. So it's a real, I'm glad in a sense that Patrick Bet-David has this liar on his show, but he is a liar from start to finish. And he's just a nonstop narcissistic lying sociopath. That's what Chris Cuomo is. And I'm glad he's now admitting some of the things, but he still won't admit the big things.
He doesn't want to break kayfabe. Just get him to admit, like Chris, because he said mutual respect. He's a wrestler. I'm a wrestler. We're doing our wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm not going to break kayfabe because I'm a pro. You got to give him a break kayfabe. You're like, now will you admit wrestling's not real or the thing that you did that you called journalism?
So, okay. I look forward to you talking to him. I wanted to talk to you about this. So, it took me a while to figure this out, but
me too.
It took me a while to figure it out, but I figured it out that all this stuff about trans and bathrooms and LGBTQ month and all that stuff, that didn't come from the grassroots, right? Because there was a time in this country when gay people were second-class citizens and they couldn't get married. They could get kicked out of their job if they were found out they were gay.
They could only work at the CIA.
They could
in the closet as Nazis.
They could only have the FBI. But they could also get kicked out of their house. So those times are over. And now all of a sudden, race relations had been getting so much better. We elected a black guy president overwhelmingly twice. And then all of a sudden, around 2012, all that changed. And everybody's talking about white supremacy. Everybody's talking about racism. Everybody's talking about LGBTQ. Everybody's talking about. Give me your take on that.
Yeah, well, like it's really interesting, and you kind of came up as a very popular figure in this world during that time, I think, right? Like that was at the beginning of it when the left kind of lost their minds. And you think about the split between you and your old guys over at the Young Turks and stuff. And what happened was that, and what's interesting is okay, so you got these these guys like Jordan Peterson types he'll talk about it in terms, and Ben Shapiro was like this for years too. They talk about it in terms of the left wing took over the liberals. And you'll hear them say stuff like that, there are no liberals anymore. They're all just leftists, And it kind of has this surface level plausibility to it, this story, because the story that Jordan Peterson will tell you will be look, all of these ideas were dormant in the universities.
That's
you
right.
know, and they came from these very left-wing thinkers, and that's certainly true.
Right.
But the more interesting question, look, there was critical race. Well, right. So the point is, there was critical race theory back in the 1980s and stuff, and they had, they had those university things. But around the year 2012, every single major media outlet, not mom and pop shops, the New York Times and the Washington Post, and all of them, everybody with power, Hollywood, politicians, corporations, all in unison, just started pushing this stuff like crazy. And so when you look at it like that, you realize it was a neoliberal takeover of the left. It was actually the kind of the neoliberal types started using this very woke leftist language to throw the left off of the scent of all of the bread and butter issues that the left used to be really concerned with.
Class issues.
War and peace.
Yeah.
Well, right. War and peace. Healthcare, housing, things that are very tangible and matter to people's lives. And then it started just being this obsession with privilege and, language and, sensitivity. And all of a sudden we were always really worried about what an upper middle class black person felt about a situation on a college campus or something. It wasn't there was ever real concern for hey, look in the inner city in Baltimore. Look at these fucking black people who are really struggling there. It was always look at the most privileged black people in society, and then they're going to complain about something that's not
Hogwarts.
that big of a deal. And
not muggles, the Hogwarts wizards. How are they doing?
And look, the tragedy of it is that it destroyed so much of the left. So much of the left got completely sucked into all of this nonsense. And I'm not a leftist, but I think there's value in there being a good left wing in your country. And I remember the old George W. Bush protests. Like I remember seeing them, the war protests in New York City. And I went and talked to some of the guys there, and they were like, look, the Patriot Act is un-American, right? And he lied about this or that. And they weren't chanting death to America. And they weren't like, they like, even the left, now that they've kind of finally come back around and they're kind of on the right side about Palestine, they're just still carrying so much of that woke baggage from the last few years that they haven't let go. And it's a tragedy.
And I realized that all this stuff, the DEI, the ESG, the trans issues, the bathrooms, the drag queen story hour, all that didn't come from the grassroots up, because my gay friends who know drag queens said the last thing you want to do is be around a kid. Because they don't ever want to be, they don't want to be accused of any of that stuff. So and then I saw the head of BlackRock talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's where all this came from. So this all came from the top down, and it was a way for companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, who are raping the planet and screwing workers and citizens and everybody, and they want you to own nothing and be happy. That was a way for them to shroud themselves in virtue by saying, look, we have a gay person screwing you out of your housing. We have a lesbian black person who's making bombs to blow up people in other countries.
Finally,
we have that's what.
Dude, and it's so brilliant. The plan was so brilliant if you think about it, because like the three of us, like I grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, and like I know Kurt, you spent long periods of time in New York City in a very left wing liberal type industry, and obviously Jimmy, you've run in very left wing circles, and it was like the perfect like ploy to get because if you know, like loosely speaking, like liberals and leftists, one of the things they pride themselves on, and they've always historically prided themselves on, is that like they're the not racist ones.
Yes.
They're the not bigoted ones. And that makes sense because, you know, like given this country's history, there was like a time when it was a really noble thing to like pride yourself on like, no, I'm not the dude who's a dick to people just because they're of this race. And I'm not, you know, they were, you know, I'm the one who thinks gay people should be allowed to be married. And I'm the one who doesn't want. And then this woke stuff just, it like sent this social signal that was like, well, if you're the person who's not racist and you're the person who's not a bigot, you got to be over here. You got to be shouting this shit the loudest. And everyone just got, it was like,
social signal over social media using the networks that they set up. Remember people, 5G is going to do some, I don't know, supernatural thing. No, just the regular thing it did was spread the virus. It wasn't any secret. They did it. Everybody, I think it backfired on its creators, honestly.
And so it was also not only that, but it was a perfect way to keep people divided and fighting over things that they don't care about. I've seen you talk about this, that they'd rather have us fighting over abortion because it doesn't hurt the Fed, right? So go ahead. What do you say about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, like an abortion obviously is like an important issue, and there's valid perspectives about that issue and real debates that people have, and it's certainly, you know, it's killing a baby, kind of, and whether you think the woman has the right to do that or not, it's an issue that's very important. But no one at the CIA is like, oh no, Roe v. Wade was overturned, or oh no, you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't affect them at all. And so when you see that again, you saw this with Bernie Sanders, right? Like they don't like anyone who, look, Occupy Wall Street was focused at the big banks. And even the Tea Party movie, that was focused on like government debt and government spending. And you're talking about powerful people. What is government spending? Government spending is how political, you know, cronies get their money. That's like you're going after a power source. Banking, that's a power source. And so like it worked out at least very conveniently for these guys that they totally, instead of like, just think about it, just in a decade or a little over a decade, they got the left and the right fighting about whether you can cut 6-year-old boys' dicks off and shit. Like that's literally the fight that's going on. The fight going on just over a decade ago was the right saying that this debt is insurmountable, and like the left saying these banks just got bailed out after they tanked the economy. This is bullshit. You know, and like now we're fighting over this. This psyop worked so well. It's like unbelievable how successful. You almost have to tip your hat to these guys.
What, the New World Order?
You almost have to tip your hat.
They're good, Kurt.
I found this on Twitter. Kurt brought this up to me that Gloria Steinem actually bragged about working for the CIA.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that,
Ms. Magazine. In
and
fact,
so,
yeah.
and so listen to this video. Watch it.
Is that we were at the house one night and we were talking and he started laughing. He said, Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about? And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said things about women having the right to work at equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, you're an idiot. And I said, why am I an idiot? He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He said, there were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them. And so those are the two primary reasons for Women's Lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. You know, when I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture.
So I just read a book called The Undiscovered Self, or Unexamined, whatever. It's by Carl Jung, and he talks about this. He talked about how to usurp. So you look to the state as your nanny. You look to the state as your family. You look to the state, and anyway, so even women's liberation was a psyop funded by the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
To control.
And break up. Yeah, that's right. And to control through like breaking up the family, which is, by the way, like it's a hallmark of authoritarian regimes. Like they break up the families, they break up the churches or incorporate the churches, right? Like you either have to be the state religion, but they don't like independent religion from, you know what I mean? If you think about the worst, most like authoritarian
except
regimes.
for Black Ops.
Right, yeah. But like, you know, and why? Because exactly as was laid out in the video there, it's that the government wants them to be the ruler, and you know, if you like, this is why people are so hostile toward religion, on you know, kind of like the crazy woke progressive world. It's you know, you don't want to worship anything else. They want you to be worshiping Fauci and AOC. They don't want you to have your own, you know, like God. They don't want you. And also, there's something about having an intact family unit that like, look, you're less likely to be reliant on the government. And of course, also, as was pointed out in the video, and he even kind of missed another layer of it, but also that it's not only they get 2 taxable incomes if you and your wife are both working, but also typically that involves a cost of daycare. And now that's taxable also. And then there's a bunch of employees from that are taxable. So yes, the government is incentivized in many different ways to do this.
Exactly. So if you don't have a true experience of the transcendent and the divine, you still have that psychological need. This is what I just read in Carl Jung's book. You still have that need. And I noticed that that's what the people who consider themselves on the left did during COVID, was exactly as you just pointed out, Dave. They substituted Fauci, and they substituted government, and they substituted their idea of science for religion. Their science became a religion, and science isn't supposed to be questioned, just like religion can't be questioned to the religious. But that's what science all is. It's all questioned. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if you think about it, right? Because it's almost like this weird, you know, what exactly is the definition of religion? But if you think about it, look, obviously all the science during COVID was completely like all wrong and wasn't logical. And even like we were just pointing out with the I'm vaccinated and you got to get vaccinated to protect me, you know, like all that stuff. So if you're just believing that, and not just believing it, but making it like a big part of your personality that you believe that, what do you call that? Okay, it's like you're under a spell, dude. You're under some type of trance here, and I don't know if you can be broken out of it. Some people can, but a lot can't.
There's people work for this show still in that trance. They stopped working for me because of it. They didn't even want me to talk about it. They even want me to talk about COVID or talk about the vaccine. Even when I caught on that it didn't stop transmission and contraction, they didn't want me to talk about it. They didn't want me to bring on Dr. Robert Malone. They wanted me to bring on, literally a quote was, you should bring on more mainstream doctors. It's like, I don't know if you know what we do here. It's called an alternative news show. Okay. It's alternative news. It's like, that's like saying, hey, why don't you bring on more generals to tell us about Syria and Ukraine? It's like, that's not what we do here.
Okay.
So just one more time, that's what they did. They substituted their idea of science, which isn't science. Science is all about questioning, but the new science was you can't question it. So that became their religion, because psychologically, people still have a need for religion. And if you don't have a real religion and you don't have a real experience of the divine and transcendent, you're going to substitute the state for that, which is exactly what they did. And it's not a new game, because Carl Jung wrote about it 60, 70 fucking years ago. Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, it's not a new game because the Romans called it religio. That's the state religion. A cult would be a thing that's not the state religion.
Right.
Like Christianity was a cult. There's a whole bunch of different ones. And then that's how it works. It gets absorbed into the state. But the word religio, that's why the founding fathers had freedom of state religion, right? They were supposed to not establish an official one. You could do whatever you want, but that's for private industry to do eventually. All the shit with the like the nuclear family, they call it, right? You'll hear conservatives say that. That was already a breakdown of the family. The family was grandma and grandpa, and your family had. No, only Rockefellers got to have that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So you were already all the 50s Reagan bullshit. The nuclear family, that was already, you were broken down.
That's right.
And they did that with public education.
Well, Kurt, it's such a good point, man.
My girlfriend came up with it before I did, but
it's really, really true, right? And the funny thing about it is that while conservatives kind of, idealize the 50s, as Kurt said, this was actually the first generation that broke down to the nuclear family.
Right. Then we split the atom after that.
Right. Well, it's not that much of a coincidence that also this decade was followed by the 60s. So if you see almost kind of like the way things went, it's like, yeah, this was kind of destined. Yeah, this thing was already crumbling. And then it just got much, much worse from that. I'm saying from the perspective of someone who's like idealizing the 50s. And it's like, it's weird they make no connection between that.
Because you're
and still to this day, the Vietnam War. They still don't connect it to the Vietnam War and go like, oh yeah, maybe you guys shouldn't have fought that stupid war and turned half the country against the other half of it.
No, we could have won, Dave. Rockefeller, that's Rockefeller. The Carnegie planning for schools. When you could read that essay where they go, we don't want thinkers that's why I hate any kind of, people are stupid. You can't tell. Everybody's got to stop talking like that, because people are dumb because they're doing it on purpose to them. They're doing it on purpose all the time. It's just nonstop, and the state will just change. And by the state, I mean this whatever corporation that actually runs shit, not of course the shell company of America. Whatever that military-industrial Roman psycho complex is, they keep making a new movie for everybody to believe. So now, that's why I think you're seeing all this stuff come out now with, is it fallen angels or aliens coming back? It sounds like focus groups from a goddamn movie. Which one do you like better, audience? And we're going to go with that one. And we're going to have like a Reagan sunrise coming up. That's what I think the powers that be are leaning on now. We're going to have a nice Reagan sunrise after you had your belly full of that. And you'll never want to go left again, because remember how much that sucked when lefties said things for 10 years straight? Remember? So now you're going to go running back to be trad.
I hope they're trying to generate some type of huge swing back in the opposite direction to what we're going, because the alternative to that is that they're just trying to destroy the country. And so I don't know, if I look at a lot of this stuff where did you see there was Soros money going to some of the
protests,
the Free Palestine protests?
Yes.
And then you're like, so you're telling me this Soros guy fund rolls the entire Democratic Party of hardcore Zionists, and yet he's also funding protests and you're like, is his goal just chaos?
Yes.
Just tear the whole thing down?
Yes, chaos chaos favors the establishment.
Right. But so then it's so what is the plan with that? If you have a plan to create that type of chaos, you have something coming after that. And there's been a lot of things that have been floated out by different power centers, whether it's central bank digital currencies or the new pandemic protocols and stuff like that. And it's I don't know what or maybe even as Kurt said, it's a setup of this is going to swing back in some other controlled direction. But my biggest concern about all this is that it does seem like there is, it feels like when 9/11 happened, if I was smarter and kind of understood what was going on, and you'd be like, oh, and I remember Ron Paul said this and people gave him shit for it because he said this quote, and it was, I guess on September 12th, a staffer claimed he said this. And they were like, oh, look how insensitive about the people who died in 9/11 he was. This is what he was thinking of. But what he said to him was, he goes, now you're going to see the rise of big government. And, it's like he was like, you're going to see a response to this that's going to be just awful on every level. And like, I feel like we're right on the precipice of something like that, where you're just like, they're planning something.
Alex Jones
very
predicted
bad.
that, by the way. Alex Jones before, that's a fine statement. I thought it was going to be way more harsh for him to be.
No, that was it. He's a sweet old guy.
Well, Alex Jones called the whole thing 2 weeks back when I wouldn't listen to him. All these people you didn't listen to, you should just hear them out, because even if they're wrong, you're still getting data, and it starts to make a lot of sense, the big picture.
And so I just want to show you this before we let you go, because I know you are against war, and you're against certainly genocide, and you're against funding war and the military-industrial complex, which is a point of agreement that we have politically. And so here's a video you'll never see on the news. You'll never see this on MSNBC, CNN, or Fox, or any of the other ones. And it's because the Hasidic Jews see Zionism as anti-Jewish. And they see it as the project of the devil. And so the Zionists have to go after them. So I just want to show you this. Here's the Israeli police going after the Hasidic Jews. Watch this. So that's
they do it to somebody else, will do it to you.
You would call that anti-Semitic. I would call that anti-Semitic. That's anti-Semitism. But that's how do you respond to that, Dave?
Yeah, well, it's really amazing, like the difference between the image of the Israeli government that you get, from the corporate outlets, and when you actually look into the reality of it. And it's look, we've had a big buildup in the militarization of our police here in America, but that's another thing that I think people like don't. What was that cop show? Was it Andy Griffin, the cop show?
Yes.
Like, okay, I'm not saying that's exactly how it was, but like the rise of the warrior cop, which is a very good book, by the way. The author's not a fan of mine, but it is a good book. That's a very new thing, and that's a big part of Israeli society as well.
Yeah, after 9/11, we got to get tough like Israel. Then they gave everybody.
They militarized our police. Barack Obama was the biggest. He did that. He gave the most military equipment to the local police, and then they all got trained by the IDF and Israel, and now they all act like that. And so now they see. Well, I've talked about this many times. The problem here in Los Angeles is that all the cops live out by Magic Mountain, and then they drive into the city and they look at it like the military did when they were in Iraq, right? They looked at they're an occupying force, and they see the citizen.
Pay them like military.
Dude, I lived in this town a couple years ago that when I left New York City during lockdowns, me and my wife got this place in this little town in Jersey. It's like this little town, like a beach town. So it's like during the winter, it's kind of dead and there's like no one really there. And there was like no crime. It was a tiny little town, like 15 blocks maybe of town. And they had their own local police department, and they had a tank. And this was a police department that literally, I'm talking about, if you called, they used to do for the few kids who lived in the area, they would do like a birthday march, and the cops would come and escort you because they just had nothing to do. Like if you called up and you were like, you want to come to my kid's birthday party? The cops would be like, absolutely, I want to come. We got nothing going on. And they would roll the tank in back. Like for some kid turning 7. They just had nothing to do with this shit. And I'm just, it's just one anecdote of a little town in this country, but like every little local police department has like war gear for absolutely no reason. And then, by the way, in 2020, when riots came and it was like, maybe this is the first time that it's ever been justified to have this type of like army on your own shores. And they were tearing down the country, and they were like, stand down when they're rioting.
Yeah, of course.
Stand down.
You know what
pepper spray the
Rockefeller?
peaceful protesters and stand down as the riot.
So the reason why that was that why they stood down during you're talking about the Black Lives Matter riots. The reason why I saw Cornel West give a speech in Harlem, which no one showed up to except a handful of white people. Which I warned him about. That's why I bring it up, because I warned him about it and he called me a Trumper. But he said, could you imagine if those were black people on January 6th? And I was like, yeah, nothing would have happened to them, because you know what's happening to those white people? They're being put away for 10, 20, and 30 years. People who weren't even there. Do you know what happened to the people during the Black Lives Matter riots who they burned down police stations in Atlanta? Nothing. So
yeah, and they could say like, oh, well, that's the Capitol Hill. That's different than that. Even though there were government buildings in lots of states that were like ambushed during those riots. But it's just so obvious that it's like, look, you just had these riots and the entire media class sided with them. They said fiery, but mostly peaceful.
I'll never forget that.
That's right.
That was a big mistake.
And then you have January 6th, where the entire media class decided it was 9/11. Like, I mean, so, look, Cornel West, I'm not even saying like, the thing about it is, right? Okay, obviously we don't live in like the Jim Crow South or something like that. But I'm not trying to say that there's like nothing about our society that's like a little tougher for black people, or in this area they don't face different challenges or something like that. But when you're so like indoctrinated with this stuff like Cornel West is, the problem is like that has to be your explanation for everything. And so even when that's clearly not the dynamic at work, you're still trying to force this into a race issue. But if you see there's one riot, the entire powerful class all supports them. There's another riot, the entire powerful class all says this is 9/11, they should be treated like terrorists. The idea that your takeaway from that would be, if they were black, it would have been even worse. Like, obviously, race isn't the factor here.
That's right.
The factor is which one was a threat to power and which one was perceived as helpful to power.
But in fact, I go even one step further and say that those Black Lives Matter riots were encouraged by, if not instigated, they were encouraged. And why were they encouraged?
Well, look, think about it like this. Think about it like this, right? What happened to George Floyd was like fucked up, and the video of it is like incredibly like angering and tragic and all that. You got this guy who's tweaked out on drugs, and the cops at every single step escalate the situation, of course, because that's what they do. But it's just so obvious the movie. The guy's having a full-fledged panic attack for a while, if you watch the full video, before they even get him out on the ground. At no point is he like a threat to them. And yet they throw him on the ground, they knee on his neck. Like, I don't care what anybody, I know there's a bunch of right-wingers who are like, there were 2 autopsies done, and one autopsy said that it was the fentanyl and not the this. It's like, whatever, dude. Even in the best case scenario, they found a guy having a panic attack, tweaked out on drugs, decided to violently throw him on the ground, handcuff him, and kneel on his neck. It's horrible, right?
Israeli training is called.
Yeah, right. But shit like this happens all the time. Where there's 300-something million people in this country, there's always incidents like this. And there's no question that the corporate media, after 3 months of lockdowns, picked this story and decided to run it all day on every single channel and constantly talk about it and totally like stoke up and inflame tensions. And there's just no question about it. And then there was all types of money that was put into bailing the people who got arrested at the riots out.
Yeah.
And if you can follow that trail, which is fairly interesting. But a whole bunch of like celebrities and politicians were getting behind this, like raising bail money for the violent ones who had like gotten arrested. It was totally like, and a lot of times people think these things are like 100% controlled or they're organic. But the reality is usually that there's a big mix of a lot of control in it.
A lot of control.
Got a lot of groups,
and
a lot of families.
But the bigger reason why this was because the establishment wanted to create an environment of chaos and fear, and people think that we're about to explode into a civil war, and we got to get rid of that Donald Trump racist, because that's what this is going to. If he gets reelected again, we're going to have a civil war, and that was being stoked by the FBI, the establishment, the media. They were all pushing that, and this was all another, just like RussiaGate, which was ubiquitous. RussiaGate.
Yeah, well, listen, I'll say this, and I'm not saying like I could prove this or anything for a 100% certainty, but I'm just saying I've read a lot about like color-coded revolutions,
Yeah.
Like that America is like, like in Serbia or in Ukraine.
Yeah. Arab Spring.
In Ukraine again. These type of thing. Right. And what happened in America in 2020 maps out almost perfectly.
Yes, it does, doesn't
to the way they run all of these colored revolutions. It's always the same thing. And it's like they try to foster total media control against one of the candidates and for the other ones. They try to get people out protesting in the street and keep them out as long as they can, just making it always, if there's chaos in the streets, that's inherently bad for who the ruler is.
Yes.
It demonstrates right away the ruler cannot keep order, which is always the number one selling point for a ruler. Why do you submit to my rule? Because I can protect you from the chaos of the world. And so when there's chaos, that hurts the leader. And then the other thing they always try to do is stuff ballots, and they try to, create false flags and all types of these things. So I'm saying between the Governor Whitmer thing, there's your big false flag, October surprise. You had the protests in the streets. You had the media completely in the tank for one of the candidates. And you have an overhaul of the way we do voting in this country. You had this all in 1 year, plus adding lockdowns and all the, clamping down of all these different things. Also add in the mass censorship campaign. This was the year 2020 when everybody who was saying something against the regime was in serious trouble of getting completely censored. And you just put all of that together, and it's like, goddamn, man, that looks exactly like a color-coded revolution. It's all of the same. Now, I'm not saying I can prove it is. It's just, goddamn, what a coincidence.
Is there a debate that it isn't? First of all,
yes,
it's obvious what's happening. Historically, we've been a pyramid scheme, right? And now, for 2030, because we have to reset, they're going to downgrade us to a human centipede scheme. It will not even be as good as a pyramid scheme. You're going to have your mouse staple on somebody else's ass, and that's how you're going to get what you need.
What is the libertarian position on climate change and should we have I know you're against a Green New Deal, but what is your position on climate change? And go ahead.
Well, I think, I guess, first of all, I'd say stuff like, if you're really concerned about, emitting these, these toxic gases or into the biggest carbon footprint in the world is the U.S. military. And I believe the biggest release of CO2 was
the Nord Stream pipeline.
Methane. I'm sorry, was the Nord Stream pipeline. So, the government is the biggest, culprit
they don't
in
believe
this game. But what's that?
No, it's obvious they don't believe in it.
Look, I'll tell you this. I don't believe in it either.
I used to.
I think the whole thing is all nonsense. And it's not that, well, look, for one, I think the whole argument that this always rested on, which is why every single person who's in the left half of America has been completely convinced for the last, 30 years that there's either this global warming or this climate change thing. And they just know that. And it's just an article of fate that obviously I'm right. And you're obviously an idiot if you don't know that. And what was the rationale for that? What was that all based on? Oh, that's what the science says.
Manufactured consensus.
All the experts say this. And look, I would say at least after COVID, if you're not going, hey, no, that's not enough anymore. You can't just say all of the experts say this. Someone's going to actually have to explain this to me. I understand climate science and virology and all these things are very complicated, but you got to kind of at least explain this to me so it makes sense. I got to hear from the experts who are against this too, because by the way, there's a lot of those. But the real thing with climate change is that even by their own models, first of all, it's not nearly as bad as the hyperventilating progressives say it is. It's not. Bernie Sanders goes, climate change is going to make the world uninhabitable for our children and grandchildren. But that's bullshit. Nobody says that. That's as anti-science as any statement. You cannot find one credible scientist who says anything like we're going extinct in a couple generations. And the other thing is that even if the temperature raising by a few points in the next 100 years is true and does happen and has some negative consequences, every single policy that they put in that they propose just gives this criminal organization more power and fucks over regular working class people with no hope of actually solving the problem.
Well, they'll blame you.
Like even by their own models.
You don't think Dutch farmers are the big problem in the world, Dave?
Right.
Because of the nitrogen.
You don't
Dave.
think you
nitrogen.
don't think gas powered leaf blowers are what's actually going to screw the planet and make us go extinct? Isn't it amazing that they passed those laws? I live in California. They passed those laws that make it illegal to have a gas powered lawnmower and a gas powered leaf blower, but they don't pass a law to make it illegal to have a private jet. That
Right.
Greta Thunberg will never protest out in front of another military base that's being built. They built 2 inside Syria. They built 3 in the. She'll never ever. In fact, she went to Ukraine to cheer on the war that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So so that's how you know she's a psyop.
That's right. And look, man, if we're getting into these like this realm of conspiracy again, I do like to disclaim that like I can't prove for sure some of these things. I'm just saying that like if you take a look at it. It does start to look like between the transgender thing and even like the climate change stuff you're talking about, where it's always like, hey, you won't have a plastic straw anymore. You'll have a paper straw. You suffer, little guy. You be humiliated. You be like there's almost like this big push to take away any sense of pride. And I think that kind of goes along the same lines as we were talking about with the churches and the families. There's something also about kind of like collective pride, like we're proud of our country, our heritage, our people, our this. That's all of that is very attacked. And it seems very deliberate.
It is deliberate.
By
What do you mean it seems?
And by the way, that
I'm just saying I can't prove it, but it sure does seem.
Well,
that
I
way.
can prove that I have a blue and a green and a black garbage can at my house, and they all go to the same fucking place. I can prove that.
Hey, it seems
I can
weird
prove
Michael
that
Jackson spoon boys. I can't prove nothing.
That recycling's has been a scam for at least 30 years. Recycling is a scam. And I've been reporting that on my show since at least 2017 that is a scam, but we still have to do it because it makes people feel like they're recycling and they're doing something for the planet. They're not doing anything. And by the way, you got rid of your plastic straws and you replaced them with billions and billions of fucking masks that go right into the goddamn ocean. And you still see morons wearing masks. It's just amazing. But
yeah, and it's like it's not that there's not. I'm not saying like there's no groups out there who do things like this, but it's like there's never any attention anymore in just doing something real. Like, oh, you're like a lefty and you care about the environment. Like, oh, okay, go help clean up a lake or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I saw this plan for like Davos to take over the entire world so that you get like what? That's the way we have to do environmentalism? It makes no sense. And the same thing with all the woke shit. It's like, okay, so like, are you going to Camden and giving a little kid shoes or something tomorrow? Like, are you doing something like a real tangible thing in the world instead of just replacing it with this like thing where it's like, no, but if I just subscribe to the dominant ideology, I'm
actually
now
taking
a good
their shoes
person.
away. What they're doing is taking shoes.
Literally, right.
It's like it.
Well, I shouldn't say literally, but that's one of the worst things. I also, this is a big part of the reason why I'm a libertarian. I think it's one of the worst things about government, but it's certainly one of the worst things about like this current ideology is that it's like you get to feel like a good person for like outsourcing your morality to a criminal organization. You get to sit there and say, I'm for free this. It's like, okay, but like, maybe you can't give everyone everything, but you could go give someone something right now. Go help out a person instead of just advocating somebody else is forced to do it.
Well, don't you think I know we disagree on healthcare, but don't you think it's amazing that Joe Biden was allowed to run on a public option instead of Medicare for all? And then he gets elected and they never bring it up. I mean, even AOC, not Bernie Sanders, nobody, they never bring up a thing he fucking ran on.
Yeah, it is. It's really something. It's amazing how much, particularly with the Democrats, who in some ways are even worse than the Republicans at even putting on the show anymore. Like this is supposed to be believable. They taught so blatantly the whole number one issue of the campaign was healthcare. And it was like that. It was all who's for Medicare for all and who's not. And that's going to be the big question. And Elizabeth Warren was getting grilled constantly about Medicare for all and that. And then as soon as like the elections are over, they barely talk about healthcare at all.
They don't talk.
It's just like, this is the whole thing you guys said you were running on. And then they're like, oh, no. Well, the thing is like Democratic voters really care about healthcare. So during the election, we talked a whole bunch about healthcare, but that's over. So now
Hillary tried
Here
to
we
get
are.
it for you, but you didn't want it.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I appreciate you. I know we've taken up a lot of your time, so thanks for. We just want to wish you luck on your debate with Chris Cuomo. I'm sure you don't need it because that guy is a sham of a person, and it doesn't take light to see through him. So I know you're going to go right through him like a Mack truck. I just wish I was there to witness it in person. But best of luck to you. And where can people? Hey, by the way, how do I get invited to Skankfest?
Dude, Jimmy, you're invited to Skankfest.
Oh,
You
thank
just
you.
got invited. That's how easy.
Oh, look, Jimmy is at Mothership and he's at Skankfest.
It's been a good week for me. I just got invited to Mothership yesterday, so it's a very good week
Dave,
for me.
Oh,
Be
when are you
careful.
going down?
In first week of July.
Oh, nice. I'm going to be there, I think, the next week.
We don't.
Oh, really? Fantastic. Well, I thank you for the invitation to Skankfest. I'll let my agent
course.
know and have him put it in the calendar.
Hey,
Dude, I'll have my people contact you guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, be careful. Don't say any Cuomo's trigger words that make him.
Don't
go
say
into
Fredo.
One of his
I
alter.
won't.
Yeah, he'll freeze like Al Roker when
He'll throw you down a flight of stairs.
Don't say his MK. Ultra
I'm not
codes.
going to call him Fredo. I'm not going to do that.
That's like the N word for meatheads.
Call him Luigi. That's what I call him, Luigi. He's a Luigi too. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, fellas. I had a lot of fun.
All right, Dave. I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you later.
Later.
Let's go to a card.
Let's go to a break and we'll be right back.
Isn't it swell? The memes make themselves. They found a rabbi hole, tunnels and all. There's Jews in the walls. Isn't it bliss? The rabbinical grace soiling the mattresses. Well, let me tell you. If I were Rabbi Shmuley and diddle 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 digga digga diddle diddle dum, all day long I'd diddle little bums. If I were a Shmuley man, I'd peddle all my dildos, dreidel dildos, selling dildos with my daughter and her mum. If I were a Jewish Shmuley man, I'd be digging with a dildo in my bum. I'd wear a grotesque nose and go grab some goyim right on the nipple with a pinch. A Shabbos lap dance brace for the youngest mensch.
At this time, more than any other time, you know, revolution is necessary. It is necessary. Not only based on what has happened with the MOVE organization, you know, the babies that have been murdered, you know, MOVE adults that have been murdered, bombs being dropped on us, but past that to what is happening with all black people, so-called minority people, you know, money poor people, You know, this government, as has been said earlier, has waged war on us. But you know, something about us, particularly here in America, we don't really understand that. You know, we don't really know what war is. You know, for black people, for poor people, that people see as good, that they wasn't forced to do, that they didn't do to try to keep black people appeased, you know, and calm down so that black people wouldn't riot. A prison situation is a crystallized example of that. You can make phone calls in prison. They have movies in prison. But they don't have those things because they just want to be nice to prisoners. They have those things because they know damn well if they don't have, you know, people being able to contact their family, if they don't have, you know, facilities for people to sit there and watch movies, people are going to be frustrated, upset, and they're going to direct that frustration at them prison administrators. And they're going to have riots on their hands. You know, they're going to have people in them prisons turning them prisons out. That's why they have movies. That's why they have access to phones the way they do. And a stop to it when we don't like it, or encouraging it when it's something that's in our interest. You know, we have to call the shots. The people have to take the reins of this system and start dictating, you know, what we need, what needs to be done. And, you know, taking the initiative to do it ourselves. We can't rely on this system. I mean, you know, don't people see what's happening? Every single confrontation that MOVE people have been involved in, every single issue, you know, oppression, economic issues, every single issue facing our people, you know, is something that can be dealt with very, very simply. All people got to do is make their wishes known. All people have to do is stand up and say, listen, we're not accepting that. Unity is the key. Unity is the key to revolution. Revolution ain't nothing to be afraid of. It ain't nothing to shy away from. Revolution, contrary to what officials, you know, this system and those backing the officials running the system, you know, want people to believe that revolution means violence, you know, means blood in the street. I'm saying it can get to that point, but it don't have to be violent. You know, when people come together and take a strong stand on an issue, this government don't have no choice but to listen. Where you think they get their authority from? They don't have no power, but they do have authority to do certain things. Where you think they get it from? They get it from us, from the people. You know, they get it from us accepting the things that they do to be done to stop it. Then you have some people who want to then turn around and say, yeah, well, you know, it's the best we have, and want to make excuses. The time for excuses is over. It's over. You know, every man, woman, and child has to be involved in this revolution. Not only has to be, but is, whether you want to be or not. I mean, our babies gave their lives for this revolution on May 13th. You know, men, women, and children were murdered. And not just MOVE babies, you know. What about all of the young men, women, you know, children 8, 9 years old shot down on the street by cops, you know, by drug pushers? I mean, you know, where do you think that mentality comes from? It comes from this system, from the mentality of this system of getting over, you know, making a quick buck, you know. I'm saying that's where that needs to be done to stop it. Then, you know, what I want people to really, really understand is that it's past time. It is past time for poor people, black people, you know, to realize that this system has failed you. It has failed you. You can't get nothing from it. And what people got to do is withdraw our support from it and start doing for ourselves. That's what we got to do. You know, how long are people going to sit back and beg, you know, this government to do what's right when for hundreds of years, all you've gotten is a slap in the face. All you've gotten is this government kicking your ass. That's all. That's all black people have ever gotten from this government.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit